So I think the first thing really is to understand how a person sees themselves. So the starting point very much is where are you at right now and where do you see yourself and what do you think your actual strengths are? Because how you see yourself is an impact on how other people see you. I think that part of those things in loving yourself and caring for yourself come from understanding what you're good at and working in that space of strength 70% of the time, right? Because we don't get to do what we want all the time. Everybody's got something they struggle with, something they find really easy, something they just find impossible. And again, we emphasize what success looks like in our society, right? And it looks like a well tailored suit and an office overlooking a park in New York City. That's what we say success is. Being able to sit down and eat the steak dinner in the back room of a restaurant and be able to make these deals. And when you look at all those successful people, there's a serious level of sacrifice that comes along with that that isn't talked about in school when we're thinking of these fancy careers, even on career day. So, hey, kids, bring somebody in for career day. Bring in an auntie or an uncle, and they stand there and they give a kid, oh, I'm a pilot. I get to fly in planes. I get to do this, that, and the other. They're not standing there saying, you know what, kids? They're not standing there saying, hey, kids, you literally can never take drugs. If you want to be a pilot, most of the stuff other kids do, you just can't do. You are going to have to study these specific subjects and you're going to have to be so good at what you do. And so then kids are like, yeah, when I grow up, I want to be a pilot. There's people that don't believe they can be a pilot that should because they can and they would be amazing. And they're not exposed to knowing that that's a career that they can follow. And then you've got these other people that, yeah, I want to be a pilot because so-and-so's dad is a pilot. And it looks really fun to fly planes and press buttons and tons of engineering jobs within aeronautical and aerospatial engineering. And where are those career paths for the future engineers that are currently wondering, what can I do? Because they're not the people that get seen on career days. There's kids that can't pass a math test, but they could strip an engine down and put it back together again and tell you what's wrong with it and tell you how to improve it. So I think in general, we have to find different ways to help younger people understand that they have strengths and skills and abilities that A, they may not have discovered yet. B, they may not have had nurtured because the system that they're in just doesn't cater to what it is that they need or have or can be. And we need to stop putting younger people in these boxes that tell you you've got to become a tradesperson or you've got to become an academic or you've got to become this, that, and the other, because most people, when they graduate, don't do the jobs that they went to university to study. And I don't know how many people at 14, 13, 15 years old are told that. Most people with a psychology degree end up being accountants. Tons of people that work in finance have got English degrees, history degrees, art degrees, and whatever else. So a lot of people don't end up following their dreams. Their dream may have been whatever they went to school for. And then, hey, I go into this career and now I'm boxed in. A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And been my favorite book since I was 18. And when I studied my undergrad, I majored in psychology and minored in sociology. And one of the things that we studied in sociology was the McDonaldization of society. But I see these patterns repeating. And I think what we've done is we're trying to create this monolithic version of humanity. And then we expect people to stay in their lanes, right? Stay in your lane. Hey, you're poor. You're not supposed to be at Wall Street living the dream. Stay in your lane. it was unexpected for me to go and get a degree and then go work in a nonprofit for not a lot of money. But it was a job that I absolutely loved. I have no regrets of. It taught me a lot. It brought me where I am today. And it was not something I ever thought I would do as a career. And so there's this as well. We set expectations for kids going through school, for getting into their careers. Well, unless you've got rich parents that know somebody that has a business, where's your internship? Right? Unless you've got access to somewhere like New York City where there are a lot of opportunities. Where your opportunities, if you're in the middle of Wisconsin and the closest village or town is 15 miles away, right? And you're living in farmland or whatever it is. So we put these expectations, we build these systems, we tell people what the measures of success are in our society, including on social media now, which is mostly fake anyway. And then we go, why did you fail? Because society did. So I've never been afraid to fail because I wasn't raised to be afraid to fail. And I think that's something with a lot of people as well, is from cultural aspect of things. A lot of people's expectation is there is no such thing as failure, right? And all of those things have just created this really weird world where we've gone from being in our tribes and all understanding what it is that we do to being in a multitude of other people's tribes and not quite understanding where we position within those. We're not hunter-gatherers anymore, but we still have those hunter-gatherer instincts. So how do you then, instead of creating these monolithic societies where everything's the same and expected, how do you make allowances for the unexpected without it being disruption? How do you create balance in a company where, hey, you might have somebody with ADHD that can hyperfocus, but they can't control that hyperfocus. So you need something on the other side of that to keep it going when that focus isn't there. So let's work on how we build this team around it so things get handed off at the right times efficiently and keep things moving along. Also, kind of releasing from that idea of, I need to be a manager by this age because then that's successful. And we need money to live. We need to feel fulfilled and successful within ourselves. Let's measure it on how successful our relationships are. Let's measure it on how successful we are at learning to leverage the community that we have around us to bring that support together, because nobody creates success on their own. And we live in a very individualistic way where it's an individual failing because we didn't achieve the thing. But in actual fact, it's not. It's society's failing, because if we don't give people the tools they need to succeed, then you can't blame them for not succeeding. And I think that's what we've done. We've just gone so much into the categorization and the wanting to pigeonhole and everything else. And then, yeah, everybody's got a label now and everybody's getting diagnosed with ASD or ADHD or this, that, and the other. And I read a really interesting comment a few days ago that it's not necessarily that everybody's getting diagnosed now. It's dyslexia was a few years ago, where people finally started to understand what dyslexia was. And then it had its moment in the sun as people came to understand it better, as the education changed, as the information updated and things. So we're more at a place in the sun right now with neurodivergence, because it's an umbrella term to begin with that includes at the moment 7 or 8 different categories. So it has autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, OCD, Tourette's, and bipolar 2 is on the fringes of it at the moment. I'm sure I've probably missed some others that are on the fringes right now where they're looking to say, is this a mental illness or is this a divergence in the brain chemistry and how the brain developed, which means that person thinks differently? Because if you're trying to fix an illness, that's very different to understanding that somebody has a difference that can't be fixed, that creates a divergence in how you see, feel, act, and respond. We can do certain things to balance the chemicals, but we can't change the way that that thing exists, right? So with bipolar, with any mental illness, an illness suggests there's a cure for it. But if your brain chemistry is different, if your synapses fire differently to other people, if the chemical makeup's different, you're never going to fit into those boxes because you can't fit into those boxes because you are literally different. You'll find as you move more into this journey with Unlabeled and Limitless, and maybe speak to Ian and Faye, who are both diagnosed with ASD, which is the autism spectrum disorder. So they're at that level 1, which used to be called Asperger's. And there's a debate whether or not it was a good idea to take the word Asperger's out of the rhetoric, because now there's just this huge umbrella term for autism that really does include a lot of very extreme differences in how it presents, how people function, how they act, how they behave. And that's coming from within the autism community, and they're like, because it isn't the same thing entirely. I think it's important for us to really take those labels, dive underneath them, and then take them away. Because what do those labels do for us? Well, most people that get a diagnosis in later life will then go and tell people, hey, I've got a diagnosis, find very quickly that people act differently around them after they know. Even though you're the same person they knew before your diagnosis, right? People start thinking you're not capable of things that they thought you're capable of before. People start talking to you because post-diagnosis, I felt like I was a kid in school sitting in the back chewing on crayons, drooling. I could do shit here. I just have to. They build them in their own head, and we're constantly in this society where we're trying to live up to that person's expectations or this person's expectations, when we don't even know internally what our own expectations are, could be and should be of ourselves, right? So I think it really does start with our education system. And like you were saying before, with the bells and things, not that we don't need structure, because if you talk to most neurodivergent people, they crave structure. I crave structure, but I need a certain type of structure that allows me to be chaotic in the midst of it. Other people need rigid structure. When we're telling kids that things need to be this way, we need to understand that not all kids can be that way. Not all kids learn that way. Not all people think that way. And that's okay. A lot of the times, the kids in school that get put into this often end up failing out of them, because you find, somebody that's maybe a bit of a savant, or they're an excellent musician and they're really good in this structured environment and taking exams and doing these things. So they score really highly and they get put into gifted and talented programs where they can explore their creativity. Well, that's not what they were good at. They were good at the structure, right? And the kids that are climbing up the walls and yelling and creating problems for the teachers. But for somebody like me, I lived for sports. I got the school sports award. I needed that level of energy. I would have needed a talented program where I could learn science outside instead of in a classroom, where I could go and like see nature. But I didn't get that. I was in these rigid classes. Their school let us work at our own pace and do whatever we wanted up until the age of 12, 13. But we changed schools. I stopped loving arts and science, things like that, because it just wasn't cool anymore. That our school systems are not set up for people to succeed, yet we tell them the standards that they're going to fail against. And then workplaces are not set up anymore for people to succeed. There is no onboarding in a lot of companies. there is no company knowledge and transfer. How do we then expect people to know what they're good at when we measure them by how well they can take a test and not how good of a person they are to each, right? Or we're measuring them on whether or not they managed to remember like Romeo and Juliet, and whether or not this was talking about this emotionally intelligent, which is what you need in a workplace, right? You don't need Romeo and Juliet in a workplace. You need emotional intelligence. We've done an entire generation of massive disservice, right? And we've completely cut that out of schools. So, but the skills and the knowledge of the people in the neighborhood is second to none. But we don't have that level of, okay, you don't have to go to school and get a qualification per se to do these things. Let's find what you're good at and let's help nurture you.
He also made an analogy about talent scouts in the NFL and how
I think that there are a lot of HR people that understand that some of these tools aren't necessarily used effectively or in the right way or a like band-aid for different things. I think what needs to happen is from the top down, from CEOs to COOs to HR teams to individual managers and heads of departments and wherever else, need to really and truly understand what it means to work with a person that maybe has some kind of a difference. Again, it's this old school thinking. We've got to have bums on seats so that I can see that you're being productive. And it's this antiquated way of thinking that we don't have to have those things. What we need to have is something that works for what you're trying to achieve, right? Because forcing somebody that is maybe autistic to have water cooler moments that they're not comfortable with, but finding a person that's able to do Slack chats with them or maybe work on a different level to bring their water cooler moments to a group session, right? It's going to help that person shine. Oh, if somebody can't present to their team verbally, then they're not going to be a good manager. Well, maybe that person will be an excellent manager if you find a way to work through that communication thing with them. Maybe they're not confident because they've never been given the confidence. Maybe for now you accept Slack and then you build in training for that person or coaching so that they can build the skill up of what it is that they find difficult about giving feedback. And I've had years of training of delivering difficult feedback, and I'd still struggle with delivering difficult feedback. But I've had the training year over again. It becomes something that you do more natural then, right? But it's to make an assumption that everybody in a management position should be able to verbally deliver feedback. And if they can't do it, they shouldn't be a manager. When you hired them for a skill set or a strength they have that your company lacks, to me said you don't know what to do with somebody's strengths, because you should help optimize their 70% and then find a way to compensate that 30 with them. So yeah, you're as a manager, you're going to have paperwork to do. It's inevitable. I get it. You don't like having meetings and taking notes. Tough shit. As a manager, you're going to have to deliver feedback because that person's relying on you for knowledge transfer, for coaching, for training, for helping them become more, right? But let's find a way that works and we'll compensate this other 30. For now, do you need somebody, an HR person, to be with you to help you deliver that in a way that's insightful? Do you need us to practice doing a role play so that you can get comfortable? Do you need a discussion planner to take with you to keep you on track? There's shit you can do for people instead of just going, that's just not going to work. So if the world slows down and the economy slows down or we slow down, they're not going to get as much money. So we're going to have to get rid of a whole bunch of people so that they can keep getting the same amount of money. And in the interim, you're going to have to do all these jobs that you're not qualified for, that you didn't sign up for, that you may not be skilled for, that may not work to your strengths, right? And then everybody's then working in these pressure cooker things Now we need to hire because we've got a little bit more money and we understand that everybody's getting burned out and we can't exist this. It's not sustainable. So you hire somebody new. Great. We've got this new Gen Z person and they've got a 1.0 GPA and awesome. And they've gone through a school system that nannied them and told them which files to open, when to open them, how to do it. Everything was created for them to work from. Nothing was given to them to build and create themselves. So if you're in that environment in a company now where you've gotten rid of all of your grunt workers essentially to keep the wheels going and whatever else, and you're going to then replace them with these people, better make sure you've got the training in place, because my niece hadn't had any formal work training and then she's applying for jobs and she doesn't know what to tell them when she's going to interviews because she hasn't worked. So that's what we work with her on, was understanding what a workplace expects from you. And some of it is deal with it, that's life. But we were able to give her that information with tough shit. We've all had to do it. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but you've got to go through that grind to get to here, and nobody gets to here without going through that. And if you do, bottom's going to fall out from under it because you won't know what to do when shit goes wrong. So let's help you get in that entry level in a place that works for you and figure out how you will work best in that environment. And then we'll find the right company for you to give to, because you'll want to give and they'll want to receive what you have to give. We're just living in this really weird work world and school world where education isn't preparing people for work and work isn't prepared for people that aren't prepared for work. So it's, well, let's get rid of the expensive people that know what they're doing so we can get cheaper people that we assume have been educated, right? But it's, well, yeah, they've got the technical knowledge, but you don't get taught processing skills. You just follow a process in a school, right? You don't get taught how to build things. You get taught how other people have built things. It's not until master's level that you then start doing the thing. Up until that level, you're learning the thing. So, and it's like, how's about we go back to the beginning? And I'm a big fan in taking steps back. And I've never been afraid to take a step back either. I think sometimes the fastest way to move forward is by recognizing when you need to stop and take 5 steps. I'm a big fan of failing fast and standing back up. So fail quickly, get your feelings out, and then we get back up and we figure out what we've learned from that failure. And I don't think enough kids are told that it's okay to fail. How many people have career changes in their 30s and 40s? And now the science backs it up that our brains don't even mature until we're in our late 20s.
Yes.
So we're asking a bunch of kids whose brains aren't mature to decide what they want to do for the rest of their lives, and then wondering why in their 30s they return home or leave their job or go traveling or do whatever it is. And it's like, because finally our brain has matured enough for us to begin to become comfortable in our own bodies. So I think we need to give that kind of allowance now that, like, this career may be your forever career, or it may not be, but let's make the most of it and see what we can give you and what you can take from it. Because if we can help you create a better you and a better community around you, then you'll take that into your next role and it'll kind of spread the love. Make sure you walk away with as much knowledge, experience, joy, good memories as possible. I think Burning Man exemplifies that, because nobody is paid to go to Burning Man, yet people turn up and create a full city and work voluntarily while they're there. And I think that says a lot about us as humans, because even neurotypical people are neurodiverse, right? We all have these different brains. But it says a lot about what people will do when they're engaged and passionate and believe in what they're doing versus what they'll do because they have to do it because somebody told them they need to pay a mortgage.